here we go, starting off with Bitcoin as always, and let's actually go to a shorter term time frame. The same old range and the same thing that we've essentially been looking at for the past, I guess, almost 2 weeks now. And we do have an event coming in a little bit later today. That is going to be the FOMC minutes, not meeting, which is less important than a full-on meeting, obviously. But markets typically do move, and seeing as things are kind of, corked up here for a rather likely volatile event, especially considering that daily. Whoops, let me actually bring it up right here. Daily BBWP is literally at 1.19 percentile on CME, and actually rather low, of course, on spot price action as well. We probably are going to be looking for a resolution of this range, which can have major implications for bleeding on into higher term time frame signals, which we've been looking at for the past 7 to 10 days now, which I do believe are going to start to come to fruition. Maybe starting today, probably more likely end of this week, and then very, very likely beginning of next week, which actually does start off that new month of June, which is kind of what we've been saying is the likely area to see this next move come from. So in this case right here, the range, if we want to go over it, is it's the same thing as before, right? Basically 31,000 bucks the upside versus about 28.6 to the downside. We did not see any sort of a closure yesterday below that very specific 28,600-ish region, even on a short-term time frame. So what does that mean? It means no resolution equals no continuation, and the range continues right here. So I suspect that in between the time now, which this video is being recorded in the morning of Wednesday, and the event a little bit later today, it's probably just gonna be more of range. I suspect that we're unlikely to see a breakout or breakdown on the overall daily range, obviously. But here's the thing: the signals that we've been looking at are still very much relevant here, and like I said, we can very easily start to see this one, maybe even start today. So what I want to bring you over to is, of course, this chart over here, if I can see. Yes, this chart over here. Now, we've been hammering on this chart just like I typically do when we have a chart like this that does have a good amount of history and a good amount of data. And well, I'm going to hammer on it a little bit more until we see it essentially play out. And that is the daily volatility versus stochastic momentum chart. Anytime that we have seen daily BBWP, which measures volatility, which is a dispersion of returns, of course, get below about 10 percentile, the expansion phase from there has on average led to about a 20% move, sometimes a little bit more actually. In fact, the last one was a decent amount more at about 26% move, and typically happens over the course of about 7 to 14 days, or sorry, 10 to 14 days. Now, the average time taken is a lot more variable, to be fair. So I do want to be a little bit more, hammering on that, because it's not as well documented as the actual percentage moves. And in this case, we are setting up for yet again another one of these moves. So what would essentially constitute a resolution of this signal, and then what would likely beget the direction of this signal is the real question. So first and foremost, to actually confirm and even initiate the signal, we need to see the daily BBWP curl back around. It doesn't need necessarily look exactly like this, but get another positive slope, and then preferably the moving average on this also gets positive slope. If you see both of those two things, that is a signal essentially. And then what we've been looking at for the past 11 or 12, actually now I've actually backtested a little bit more now, just one more actually, but technically speaking, out of the last 12 iterations, as I get on my drawing tools over here, 10 of them have been correctly identified by the direction of the daily stochastic momentum oscillator. So that is I would say a pretty damn good test right there. And if we go into it, we will notice for the time being, the daily stochastic momentum is actually still vertical to the upside, and will be remaining with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin's above 29,000, basically 200 on a daily closing basis. There is a nuance with this though, because we haven't actually seen the volatility expansion happen just yet. It's still, a possibility, but certainly not confirmed. The longer that it takes, this is very, very specific here, the longer that it likely takes to see this expansion happen from the daily BBWP, again, specifically with the BBWP getting a positive slope, and then, a secondary confirmation with the moving average also getting a positive slope. The longer that takes to happen, while this continues upwards and onwards, the more and more likely that next signal will actually flip back down around and become a bearish signal, similar to what we saw on actually the last one, in fact, which was in April over here, where the daily stochastic was up, but no volatility expansion, stayed on the lows for a long time. Then we saw it get a nice little pickup right here, get above the moving average, also getting a positive slope, and then of course the direction on that tick was actually to the downside, and then the fall through for a nearly 26% move happened shortly after that. So When I say shortly, I mean about 13 days after that from top to bottom, essentially. So in this case right here, I do think that this one is certainly worth waiting for. Personal opinion, could there be another way to play it? Yes, absolutely. You could be looking at range resolutions, which probably do play alongside that volatility expansion. But here's the thing. If we're looking at an average move about 20%, we can forecast general targets for this, which would be, as you can see right here, about $35,000 to the upside versus about $23,000 to the downside. And of course, that has major, confluence with some of our other major things. Going back to this chart over here, if we pull out to the higher term timeframes, you will very likely notice that there is a nice big old gapola on CME coming in from 6th of May over here at about 35,000 bucks. And if we go and put in a macro fib on this from the major high, or it's not actually a macro, but a major fib on this from the high to the low of this overall range that Bitcoin's been in for about the last few months here, the 0.5 comes in right around there as well. I would also be looking at the 618 and the 382 as areas of interest along the way, meaning that if Bitcoin does trade up somewhere around here, I would be looking for at least a bit of a pullback on the daily. That's the 382 at about 32.5 to 33,000 bucks, kind of in the middle right there. And then in the event, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. In fact, I think this would be rather unlikely. But if we do see a closure of the 0.5, I would be looking for next leg up somewhere around the 618 in this case. Until then, just range or resolutions above these specific regions very likely beget a test towards the next one. And until then, like I said, as long as this remains to the upside, the probabilities of seeing this move to the upside is actually greater than the downside. But that is not confirmed until we do see the daily BBWP expand. Until then, it's theoretically, it'd actually be more likely to be bearish over time, because it's probably going to turn down when you get that volatility expansion. But hey, as long as this condition is met, I would not be running with that. Similar to what we said yesterday, essentially, which Bitcoin did bounce off the bottom side of the range yet again, which I did not call for anything like that. So I'm not going to claim victory or anything, but at the same time, just understand ranges as range does, and especially coming into an event like today, we're probably gonna be waiting at least until that event happens for range resolution. Other than that, I did want to bring up this chart over here because I want to talk about the long term. So let's say that Bitcoin does actually bust on out to the upside. I do think that it is rather unlikely that we have seen the lows. The reason why is yet again this chart over here. So I just kind of want to temper expectations that even if Bitcoin does get a move up to, let's say, even 35,000 bucks in these next few weeks here, I would caution against getting caught up in the sort of excitement of that for the long term, that is. The reason why is because we have never seen a macro low ever in Bitcoin's history without seeing the monthly accumulation distribution indicator go into, 1, the red zone, and then 2, get a positive slope from there. Right now, we're actually not even in the red zone. Now, we're extremely likely to cross into it at the end of this month, which is coming in, basically a week, a little bit less than a week, I suppose. But ultimately, that would even imply that we probably have at least another month or 2 hanging around these lows and then get a positive slope. If we see something like that, that would be the first sort of macro indication that I'd be looking for to say, hey, Bitcoin, the accumulation period is likely over, and we're probably going to see some long-term macro upside. Probably going to take some time, obviously, but that would be a really, really good sign. Anyways, you can backtest this yourself. I basically marked off all of these green vertical bars correlated to major shifts in the slope of this indicator at the extremes. And you can see that, over time, it's been actually incredibly good in timing these sorts of major moves. Less so with the moves to the downside, to be fair, but very much so to the moves to the upside, calling essentially the lows in. So I think that's a good place for me to leave off on this video. Should probably show my Instagram. Yep, we got Instagram. It's in the description below. Any other account other than that account is a scammer. So probably don't respond to whatever the hell they're asking for. And then 2, what was the other thing? Yes, Bybit. Yep, we got a Bybit shill there as well. Other than that, is there anything else that I missed in the short-term timeframes? I mean, this would theoretically be a good place for a lower high. We could even go through momentum oscillators here as well. In this case, I don't see any potential hidden bearish divergence yet on a 4-hour time frame, so I'm not super concerned with what it's doing, but I really don't have too much to be saying in the lower term time frames in general at this exact moment. Other than that, let's see what stochastic momentum is looking like. Where are the pivots right now? 6-hour is pivoted at 29,250. This is on CME. I'm curious if spot is similar. it's loading. 29,400. Okay, somewhat similar, I'd say. Yeah. And then over here, let's go check out the 4 hour. The 4 hour is pivoted at 29,250 as well. So it's coming up multiple times now. 3 hour is going to be showing, yeah, pivoted at 29.2. So a lot of things coming in around that low $29,000 number or so. And then hourly is actually flippy floppy right here, but not super. I don't really have much to make out of that. All right, cool. Hopefully that was helpful. Keep an eye out for that event a little bit later today. I expect that there's probably going to be, you know, some nice floaty price action as usual, and then we'll come back tomorrow and kind of assess the damage and where things likely land. So, there's one last thing as well. Fuck. The 5-day, we're getting a 5-day closure today as well. And the 5-day stochastic momentum oscillator, which we did not cover in this particular video, so I'll do that tomorrow. That number is coming down rather heftily here. So if that one does come down, you know, significantly again, that would be a good indication that you know, we probably do see this mean reversion bounce first to the upside, and then, you know, then maybe trade to the downside after that sometime in middle of summer or so. Anyways, hopefully that was helpful, and there you go for Bitcoin sirs and zers.